Time was once a rhythm of light and shadow, dictated solely by the sun and the stars. Then, a quiet revolution began in the workshops of medieval clockmakers. These artisans cracked the celestial code, building intricate machines that captured the motion of the heavens in gears of brass and iron. By the end of this story, you will understand how their forgotten genius forged the very concept of precise time, a force that now governs every second of our modern lives. We will uncover how they translated planetary orbits into ticking clockwork and why a device meant to call monks to prayer would eventually reshape all of human society. What does our relationship with time today owe to these masters of metal and measurement? Before gears and pendulums, time was a prisoner of the elements. A passing cloud could stop a sundial in its tracks, a water clock's flow would change with the temperature, and a simple draft might speed a candle's burning. These ancient methods bound the hours to the unreliable rhythms of the physical world. But a new kind of time was about to be born within the quiet, stone walls of monasteries. Here, the day was governed by a divine schedule, a strict sequence of prayers known as the canonical hours. The call to prayer had to sound at precise intervals, day and night, regardless of weather or season. This spiritual necessity became the mother of invention. Monks needed a keeper of hours that was not subject to the sun or the flame, and so they began to experiment with the pull of gravity itself. The first great breakthrough was the weight-driven mechanism. Imagine a heavy stone tied to a rope slowly unwinding from a drum. That steady, predictable descent became the first truly reliable heartbeat for a machine. This was not merely a new tool, it was a profound philosophical shift. For the first time, humanity was not just observing nature's time, but creating its own, harnessing a fundamental force to build a rhythm independent of the heavens. This was the pivotal moment, the foundational spark. The monastic workshop, driven by faith, had accidentally built the bridge from the ancient world's fluid time to the precise, measurable time of the modern age. And with this new mechanical pulse established, the next, even more ambitious question could be asked. Could this ticking machine do more than mark the hours? Could it actually map the cosmos? But to build a machine that mirrored the sky, they first needed a map of the heavens. That map was the Astrolabe, a handheld universe crafted from polished brass. Imagine holding a complex star-engraved disk that could tell you the time by night, predict the sun's path, and even locate your position on the earth. This was the ultimate pocket computer of the medieval world, a beautiful fusion of art, science, and practical magic. Clockmakers did not invent this device. They looked at its intricate moving parts and saw the future. The Astrolabe worked by having a rotating fretwork of stars, called a reter, turn over a fixed plate engraved with coordinates. By aligning it with a specific star, you could solve countless problems of time and celestial motion. It was a physical model of the cosmos you could hold in your hand. This idea that the grand dance of the planets could be reduced to a set of rotating disks and precisely cut gears was the Astrolabe's greatest gift to the clockmaker's art. Even the famous writer Geoffrey Chaucer, known for the Canterbury Tales, wrote a detailed guide for his son on how to use one, proving its importance in educated society. This was more than a tool for scholars or sailors. It was a proof of concept. It demonstrated that the universe was not a chaotic mystery, but a system that could be understood, measured, and mechanically reproduced. When a clockmaker looked at an astrolabe, they did not just see stars, they saw a blueprint. They began to ask a revolutionary question. What if we replaced the human hand that turns the reter with a falling weight? What if we use gears to make the stars move on their own, automatically, inside a case? The astrolabe's principles were directly translated into the first astronomical clocks. The gears that mimicked the slow wanderings of the planets, the dials that showed the moon's phases. All of this complex choreography was born from the Astrolabe's design. Every rotating gear in a medieval tower clock carries the silent, polished imprint of stellar observation. This was the critical leap from a handheld instrument that you had to operate yourself to a self-contained machine that performed the celestial calculations on its own. The clock was becoming more than a timekeeper. It was becoming an orrery, a mechanical universe driven by its own steady, artificial pulse. And with this new mechanical sky taking shape, a single, monumental challenge emerged, one that would push the craft to its absolute limits. How could they possibly synchronize all these new cosmic motions with the steady, earthly beat of the clock's driving weight? The monastery's bell tower became the heartbeat of a new order. Its call to prayer, driven by a heavy weight and a maze of gears, was no longer a suggestion from the sun, but a command from a machine. This was the turret clock, a monumental leap from the Astrolabe's handheld cosmos. It was a mechanical brain installed high in the stonework, tasked with one sacred duty: to mark the canonical hours with unerring consistency. Day and night, through cloud and clear sky, its bell sounded, synchronizing the entire monastic community, not just with a prayer schedule, but with the observed rhythms of the heavens themselves. Monks meticulously recorded the precise moments of sunrise and sunset, using this celestial data to continually adjust their mechanical servant. This was more than simple timekeeping. It was a form of worship, a divine duty to align the earthly monastery with the perfect, mathematical order of God's creation. Within this environment of profound discipline, the clockmaker's craft was refined. The erratic flow of water or the flicker of a candle was banished, replaced by the steady, predictable fall of a weight. This new reliability forced innovation. How could that raw, powerful descent be broken into perfectly equal parts? The answer was the escapement, a genius piece of machinery that acted like a gatekeeper, catching and releasing the weight's energy with a rhythmic tick and tock. It was this device that transformed a simple falling motion into the measured heartbeat of a machine. Each tick was a unit of time created by human hands. This monastic obsession with regularity, with ordering life around a celestial schedule, provided the perfect conditions for these complex gear trains and escapements to be perfected. The clock was not just a utility, it was a spiritual instrument, and its precision was a form of devotion. From these quiet, walled gardens of faith, the concept of measured time would soon escape, spreading into the bustling towns and market squares of the secular world, forever transforming how all of society would structure its day. But this grand achievement came at a personal cost, one that would redefine the very nature of a craftsman's work and life. Listen closely to the sound of a mechanical clock, and you are hearing the ghost of a medieval invention. That steady tick-tock is the voice of the Verge escapement, the first true mechanical heart. It solved a problem that had plagued all earlier timekeepers: how to tame the raw, rushing power of a falling weight. Without control, the weight would simply plummet, spinning its gears into a useless blur. The Verge escapement was the gatekeeper, a clever assembly of a toothed crown wheel and a vertical rod with two little arms called pallets. As the weight pulled, the crown wheel tried to spin, but its teeth would catch on one pallet, then the other, rocking the rod back and forth. Each catch and release was a tiny arrest of motion, a measured beat that parceled out the energy into equal, countable segments. This rhythmic locking and unlocking did more than make a sound. It created the very idea of a consistent second. Before this, an hour could feel longer or shorter depending on the method used to measure it. Now, for the first time, an hour was a precise number of ticks, a quantity defined by machinery. Clockmakers became obsessed with refining this heartbeat, polishing the pallets to reduce friction, adjusting the weight to find the perfect tempo. Their goal was a machine that could run for a day or more with minimal error, a seemingly impossible feat of reliability. Yet this was not merely a technical pursuit. In that oscillating rhythm, medieval thinkers heard an echo of the cosmos itself. They believed the universe was a divine mechanism, ordered and predictable, governed by celestial laws. The tick-tock of the Verge escapement was a miniature model of that perfect cosmic order, a physical manifestation of a philosophical truth. Time was no longer a river to be observed from the bank. It was a force that could be captured inside a box of wood and iron, its pulse measured and controlled by human hands. This mechanical heartbeat made everything else possible, providing the stable foundation upon which the dancing planets and shifting stars of the astronomical clock could perform their automated ballet. The steady tick of the monastery clock now echoed from the bell towers of cathedrals and town halls across Europe. A new sound was joining the chorus of church bells, the public chime of the mechanical clock, and it was about to reorganize the very fabric of urban life. For the first time, time was not a private spiritual observance but a public utility, ringing out for everyone in the marketplace, the craftsman's workshop, and the merchant's stall. This was the true democratization of the hour. The time of day was no longer a secret held by the clergy or a guess based on the sun's height. It was a fact announced to all who could hear it. These monumental clocks often did far more than simply strike the hours. High on their towers, they featured elaborate astronomical dials, beautiful brass and iron models of the sun, moon, and stars that turned with the day. A citizen looking up could see the moon's phase, the sun's position in the zodiac, or the movement of a particular planet. This transformed the town square into an open-air classroom, making the complex motions of the heavens accessible and understandable to ordinary people. It reinforced a powerful idea that their daily lives, governed by the clock's chime, were intrinsically connected to a vast and orderly cosmos. Building such a marvel required more than a single genius. It demanded an orchestra of skilled hands. The blacksmith forged the great iron frames and weight chains. The carpenter built the massive case that could withstand the elements, and the clockmaker designed the impossibly intricate heart of gears and escapements. This collaboration gave rise to specialized guilds and workshops where knowledge was shared, techniques were refined, and fierce competition drove the craft to new heights of precision and artistry. The very existence of a public clock became a symbol of a town's wealth, sophistication, and independence. Its chimes standardized the rhythm of the city, dictating the opening of the market, the start of a court session, and the end of the laborer's day. Punctuality was no longer just a spiritual virtue, it was a civic duty. This shared, audible time created a new kind of communal identity, synchronizing thousands of individual lives into a single, coordinated society. The town clock was more than a machine. It was the heartbeat of a new, secular order, a constant reminder that human progress was now marching in step with a mechanical pulse. High above the old town square in Prague, a golden hand moves against a starry blue dial, marking an hour that is not of this world. The Prague astronomical clock, installed in the year 1410, is more than a timepiece. It is a cathedral of gears, a philosophical argument carved in brass and iron. Its face is a complex puzzle of timekeeping traditions, showing not one but three different ways to measure the day. One dial tracks the familiar 24-hour cycle. Another shows the ancient Babylonian hours, which varied in length with the seasons, and a third marks the old Czech time counted from sunset. This was a machine that acknowledged the relativity of time itself long before the concept had a name. At its heart, this magnificent device is a monumental astrolabe translated into clockwork. A golden sun, representing our star, travels along a curved line called the ecliptic, tracing its yearly journey through the constellations of the zodiac. The moon, a silvery sphere, not only shows its phase but also its relative speed in the sky, wobbling on a mechanism that mimics its uneven orbit. Every rotation is a lesson in celestial mechanics, a visual demonstration of cosmic order for a public that had no other way to see it. The genius behind this marvel is attributed to a powerful collaboration, that of the clockmaker Mikuláš of Kladno and the astronomer Jan Schindel. Schindel provided the mathematical blueprint of the heavens, the precise ratios and periods of the planets, while Mikuláš translated those celestial equations into physical gears, levers, and pinions. Each tooth on a gear was a decision, a compromise between the perfect math of the sky and the physical limitations of forged metal. But the clock was not built only for scholars. On the hour, a small door above the dial swings open, and a procession of 12 apostles carved from wood marches past a window, each bestowing a silent blessing upon the crowd below. A skeleton representing mortality tolls a bell while other figures shake their heads in vanity and greed. This is the hourly show, a moral play and a public spectacle that draws gasps of wonder to this day. The lower calendar dial, adorned with medallions depicting the labors of each month, grounds this cosmic machine in the earthly cycle of the year, from planting to harvest. The Prague clock did not merely tell the time, it told a story, a grand narrative about the harmony of heaven and earth, the fleeting nature of life, and the divine order underlying the universe. It was a machine that taught, that inspired, and that captured the medieval ambition to build a mirror of creation itself. Its enduring legacy reminds us that the greatest human inventions are those that blend art, science, and spirit into something that transcends their function, becoming a permanent part of our shared imagination. Inside the clock tower, a silent conversation was taking place between mathematics and metal. The celestial gears did not turn at random. Each rotation was a carefully calculated translation of cosmic law into physical motion. To make a miniature sun complete its yearly journey in 365 days, while the moon cycled through its phases in 29.5, required a mechanical brain of astonishing complexity. This was the gear train, a series of interlocking wheels where the number of teeth on each cog became a numerical argument. A gear with 60 teeth turning another with 30 would complete 2 full rotations for every one of its partner, a simple 2-to-1 ratio that could model far more complex celestial relationships. The irregular loops of a planet's path, the slow precession of the equinoxes, even the subtle changes in the length of daylight across the seasons, all of these abstract astronomical truths were reduced to a set of precise gear ratios. The mathematical principles often came from ancient texts like Ptolemy's Almagest, which provided a geometric model of the universe, but it was the medieval clockmaker who gave those geometries a tangible, turning form. They were building analog computers, their brass and iron gears physically solving equations that predicted the positions of heavenly bodies years in advance. The accuracy of the entire cosmos, as displayed on the clock face, rested entirely on the perfection of these tiny, interlocking teeth. Each one had to be shaped by hand, a painstaking process of filing and drilling that demanded a superhuman level of patience and skill. A single miscut tooth, a fraction of a millimeter too wide, would introduce an error that would compound with every turn, throwing the mechanical planets out of alignment over weeks or months. The craftsman was not just shaping metal, he was carving time itself. But even perfect gears presented a physical challenge known as backlash, the tiny, unwanted movement between meshing teeth that could make a clock's indicators shudder or jump. To fight this, clockmakers became early material scientists, experimenting with different metal alloys for durability and developing lubricants from animal fats and beeswax to ensure a smooth, silent transfer of power through the entire gear train. Every decision, from the hardness of the brass to the viscosity of the oil, was in service of one grand ambition: to build a machine whose inner workings were as flawless and harmonious as the universe it sought to represent. The ticking you heard was the escapement, but the silent, steady turning of the gears was the machine thinking, calculating the position of the heavens with every deliberate mathematical rotation. This mechanical intellect, however, created a new kind of problem, one of authority and control. If a machine could now tell you where Mars would be next Tuesday, who was to say its keeper did not hold a new form of power over the very stars? The water clock's gentle flow represented an ancient world of patient observation. For centuries, civilizations from Greece to China relied on the steady drip of liquid from one vessel to another to mark the passage of the hours. These devices could be remarkably intricate, like the elephant clock of Al-Jazari from the 12th century, a masterpiece of engineering that used floating figures and ringing bells to announce the time. Yet for all their sophistication, they were prisoners of their environment. In the deep cold of a European winter, the water would freeze solid, stopping time itself. During a hot summer, increased evaporation would speed the flow, making the hours rush by unnaturally. Mineral deposits from the water would slowly clog the precise outlets, altering their tempo until the mechanism became useless. The rhythm of daily life was still tethered to the unreliable physical world. The weight-driven mechanism changed everything. By harnessing gravity, the constant, unwavering force that pulls a heavy object toward the Earth, clockmakers discovered a power source that was both predictable and independent of the seasons. A weight on a rope descending slowly as it turned a drum provided a uniform drive that did not freeze, could not evaporate, and was unaffected by the temperature of the room. This was the liberation of time from the elements. Suddenly, a clock could tick through the long, sunless night and through the coldest months of the year with unwavering consistency. This new reliability allowed clocks to shrink from monumental public works to objects that could fit inside a wealthy merchant's home or a guild hall. The practice of mechanical timekeeping began its journey from an elite marvel to a feature of everyday life. But the true potential of the weight was not just in its consistency, but in the power it provided. That steady, strong pull could drive more than just a simple gear train. It could power a hammer to strike a massive bell, announcing the hour to an entire town. It could, through a complex series of subsidiary gears, move miniature planets across a dial or shift the phases of a mechanical moon. The weight-driven clock became a stable energy platform, a foundation upon which all the later wonders of astronomical indication and automated chiming could be built. By mastering the simple fall of a weight, these artisans unlocked a new era of complexity, setting the stage for the portable springs that would one day tick inside the pockets of explorers, guiding their ships across uncharted oceans. A bishop did not merely want a clock that chimed. He needed a clock that aligned his entire diocese with the celestial schedule of the heavens. This spiritual imperative became the engine of innovation. The Church's intricate liturgical calendar, a complex web of fixed and movable feasts, depended entirely on precise astronomical observation. The most critical date, Easter, was defined by the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. Predicting this required not just observing the sky, but understanding its cycles with mathematical certainty. A miscalculation could throw the holiday seasons into disarray across Christendom. This pressing need to harmonize the human calendar with the solar and lunar years turned monasteries into centers of practical astronomy. Monks meticulously tracked the sun's path and the moon's phases, generating the essential data that clockmakers would later encode in brass. When an abbot commissioned a new clock for his abbey, he was not ordering a simple alarm. He was funding the creation of an automated celestial calculator, a machine that could model these complex cycles year after year. This patronage was transformative. The Church provided the steady funding, the protected workshops, and the prestigious commissions that allowed master craftsmen to push their art to new heights of complexity and reliability. A clock funded by a bishop carried a powerful, unspoken message. Its measured chime was not just a practical tool, it was a divine ordinance. To live by clock time was to live in accordance with a higher, God-given order. This sanctification of the hour encouraged entire towns to reorganize their daily routines around the bell's call, transforming punctuality from a monastic discipline into a civic virtue. The collaboration between the robed cleric and the soot-stained artisan was a meeting of two different kinds of knowledge. The cleric brought the rigorous framework of celestial mathematics and the urgent need for accurate forecasting. The craftsman brought the practical genius to translate those abstract numbers into the physical language of gears and levers. Together, they worked to correct the creeping errors of the old Julian calendar, their partnership a quiet rebellion against the growing disconnect between the calendar on the page and the seasons in the field. In this unique alliance, spiritual devotion provided the motivation and the resources, while mechanical ingenuity provided the solution. The very institution that sought to regulate time for sacred purposes ultimately unleashed the technology that would make time a possession of every individual, a secular force that would one day tick independently in the pockets of the world. A polished brass dial could now predict the journey of a star. Clockmakers began etching the night sky itself onto the faces of their creations, transforming time into a celestial map. They relied on sophisticated astronomical data, most notably the Alphonsine tables, a massive catalogue of star and planet positions compiled by scholars under King Alfonso X of Castile. This was not just a list, it was a mathematical key to the heavens, allowing a craftsman to calculate where every major constellation should appear on any night of the year. To integrate this knowledge, they engraved these star charts onto fixed plates and rotating rings within the clock's dial. A viewer could watch a concentric ring of gilded stars slowly turn over a grid of coordinates, simulating the nightly rotation of the firmament from a fixed point on Earth. This moving map did more than tell time. It displayed the shifting seasons and the cyclical nature of astrological ages, all driven by the relentless tick of the clockwork below. Mastering this art demanded a new kind of literacy for the artisan. They had to grasp the principles of spherical astronomy, understanding how to project the dome of the sky onto a flat metal disc using intricate coordinate systems. This knowledge often flowed from a unique partnership where a university scholar provided the theoretical framework and the clockmaker, trained through a long apprenticeship that blended math with metalwork, translated that theory into tangible, turning brass. The result was a portable planetarium, a device that brought the profound mysteries of the cosmos down to the town square. An ordinary citizen who may never have held an astrolabe or opened a scholarly text could now look up and understand the slow dance of the stars throughout the year. This was a quiet revolution in public education, where a machine built to mark the hours became the most powerful teacher of astronomy in the medieval world. By engaging both the eyes and the mind, these clocks presented time not as an abstract number, but as a visible, beautiful part of a vast and orderly universe. A master clockmaker's signature was more than a name, it was the final approval of an entire guild. These powerful organizations, like London's Worshipful Company of Clockmakers, did not merely oversee a trade, they safeguarded a sacred trust. The future of timekeeping itself depended on a rigid, multi-year apprenticeship that could last 7 years or more. A young boy, perhaps only 12 years old, would enter a master's workshop not to simply run errands, but to slowly, painstakingly absorb every secret of the craft. He began by learning to identify different metals by their sheen and weight, then moved on to forging rough blanks, and only after years of observation and practice would he be trusted to file the delicate teeth of a gear that would mesh perfectly with its partner. This was not just job training, it was the passing of a flame, an unbroken chain of knowledge ensuring that a lifetime of hard-won experience was never lost. The guilds enforced strict quality standards, punishing any member who sold a faulty clock with fines or even expulsion. This protected the public, but it also protected the reputation of the craft itself. forcing every artisan to strive for perfection. Within the guild hall, knowledge was a currency more valuable than gold. Masters specializing in gear forging shared their latest techniques with those who engraved celestial dials, while experts in escapement design debated new configurations. They maintained libraries of intricate technical drawings, the blueprints for future marvels, and hosted competitions to see who could build the most accurate or complex movement. These gatherings transformed the guild hall into a living laboratory, where a failed experiment with a new spring or lubricant was just as valuable as a success because it was documented and shared. This collective effort, this pooling of genius, turned individual workshops into a unified engine of progress. It created dynasties of clockmakers, families with surnames like de Dondi or Vallon, where sons built directly upon the discoveries of their fathers and grandfathers. The guild system transformed clockmaking from a scattered collection of clever artisans into a respected, systematic science. It was this organized, collaborative pursuit of precision that would ultimately place a reliable timepiece in every home and pocket, forever changing humanity's relationship with the passing hours. The steady tick of the town clock was a sound confined to land, but its underlying principle was destined for the open sea. For a ship's captain navigating by the stars, the most dangerous unknown was not the direction he was sailing, but how far east or west he had traveled. Without a reliable way to measure longitude, entire fleets could miss their landfall by hundreds of miles, vanishing into the vast emptiness of the ocean. Early navigators used a method called dead reckoning, estimating their position from their speed and the direction they had sailed, but this was a fragile art. A single misjudgment, compounded over weeks at sea, could lead a vessel onto a hidden reef or into barren waters far from any supply. The solution to this ancient problem lay not in a better compass, but in a better clock. To find your longitude, you need to know the precise time at a fixed reference point, like your home port, and compare it to the local time where you are, which you can find from the sun. A difference of just 4 minutes of time translates to 1 degree of longitude, a significant distance on the map. The challenge was building a clock that could survive the violent motion of a ship, the corrosive salt air, and the wild swings in temperature and humidity, all while keeping time as accurately as the finest tower clock in Europe. Pioneers like Richard of Wallingford, who built his own intricate astronomical clock in the 14th century, grappled with these very issues of maintaining accuracy in a moving, changing environment. His work, and that of countless anonymous artisans, slowly refined the escapement and the balance wheel, making the mechanical movement more resilient and trustworthy. This relentless pursuit of precision created an unexpected partnership between the clockmaker in his workshop and the astronomer at his observatory. The astronomer provided meticulously tracked lunar positions and star charts, data that was essential for calibrating the very clocks that would one day guide sailors. The clockmaker, in turn, built the stable, accurate instruments that could make these celestial observations practical and repeatable at sea. The ticking heart first built to call monks to prayer was now being prepared for a much grander voyage. It would take the genius of John Harrison centuries later to fully solve the puzzle, but the foundation for his marine chronometer was laid gear by gear in the medieval workshop. The quest to measure the heavens from a stone tower was, in the end, the same quest that would finally allow humanity to confidently cross the oceans, turning the unknown edges of the map into new worlds. A golden skeleton holding an hourglass and a spear might stand beside the dial of a great clock, its silent presence a stark reminder to all who passed below. This was not mere decoration. In an age where most could not read the written word, the clock face became an illuminated manuscript in brass and paint, its symbols speaking a universal language about life, death, and the nature of time itself. The figure of the Grim Reaper, or a simple human skull, was a powerful memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning remember you must die. This was not intended to frighten, but to inspire reflection on how one used their precious, fleeting hours. In contrast, playful cherubs or figures representing the 4 seasons illustrated the endless, hopeful cycle of renewal, the promise that life continues in an eternal rhythm. Every zodiac sign engraved around the rim was more than an astrological marker. It was a symbol of the heavens' direct influence on the earthly realm, a belief that the macrocosm of the stars was intimately connected to the microcosm of human existence. Clockmakers acted as visual philosophers, collaborating with artists to sketch these scenes, and with theologians to ensure every symbol carried the correct moral weight. A figure turning its head away from a mirror might represent the sin of vanity, while a king clutching his riches could signify the folly of greed. On the hour, automated figures would spring to life in a miniature play. A proud man might admire his reflection only for the skeletal figure of death to tap him on the shoulder, a dramatic lesson played out for the entire town. This transformed the clock from a simple measuring device into a public teacher of ethics. Its steady chime was a call to live a virtuous life, to be mindful of one's spiritual destiny, and to understand one's small but significant role within a vast, divinely ordered universe. The clock was a scientific instrument, yes, but it was also a moral compass built from gears and gilt, its face a permanent sermon on the wall. This profound intertwining of measurement and meaning raises a final, pivotal question, one that brings us to our own modern moment. What is the ultimate legacy of this medieval marriage of celestial mechanics and moral philosophy? How did the ticking heart they built so carefully inside a stone tower eventually come to beat inside the watch on your own wrist? And what has that journey cost us in our relationship with time itself? A society forever changed by profound loss began to rebuild with a new sense of purpose. The great health challenges of the 14th century had left a stark emptiness in towns and workshops, creating a desperate shortage of skilled hands. Yet this very hardship created a powerful economic paradox for the clockmaker. With fewer artisans available, those who survived could command higher wages and greater prestige, attracting new apprentices and securing generous commissions from towns eager to restore order. The very mechanisms of timekeeping were suddenly seen not as luxuries, but as essential tools for a recovering world. A public clock that could automatically sound the hours meant a town no longer needed to pay a human bell ringer for the same task, a crucial efficiency in an era of strained resources. Monasteries, also deeply affected, saw in these automated timekeepers a way to maintain their sacred schedules with unwavering consistency, even with fewer brothers to share the duties. This was not merely about replacing labor, it was about building a more resilient foundation for daily life. A cultural shift followed the hardship, a collective turning away from old uncertainties toward a new appreciation for precision, predictability, and control. In the face of immense and unpredictable loss, the measured, reliable tick of a clock offered a profound psychological comfort. It represented a world that could be understood and managed, a rhythm that could not be broken. Investing in a grand public clock became a powerful statement for a town, a symbol of its resilience and its determination to forge a more orderly future from the ashes of the past. Clockmakers, keenly aware of this new demand, adapted their craft with brilliant practicality. They began to streamline their designs, creating movements that were less expensive to produce and more robust, ensuring their clocks could be built in more communities and would endure for generations. They turned a moment of deep societal crisis into an unprecedented opportunity for innovation and expansion. From the depths of catastrophe, humanity's quest to master time did not falter. It was reforged with a stronger, more practical determination, proving that the human spirit could channel even the darkest hours into a force for progress. Richard of Wallingford's manuscripts are a whisper from the workshop, a direct line to the mind of a 14th century genius. As an abbot of St. Albans, he could have confined his work to spiritual matters, but instead he filled pages with intricate gear designs and complex mathematical notations. His masterpiece was the Albion, a theoretical clock of breathtaking ambition. This was not a simple timekeeper. It was a mechanical universe designed to predict lunar eclipses and model the subtle, irregular orbits of the planets with a precision never before attempted. His writings show a mind that saw no barrier between the celestial and the mechanical. He calculated specific gear ratios, working out how many teeth each wheel needed to turn a model moon in perfect sync with the real one, translating the grand poetry of the sky into the strict prose of mathematics. To achieve this, he devised entirely new forms of escapements, the very heart of the clock, seeking a more consistent release of power to drive his cosmic model without error. What makes his work so poignant is the context of his life. For many years, Richard lived with a serious illness, likely leprosy, a condition that would have isolated him and caused great personal hardship. Yet his manuscripts show no halt in his intellectual fervor. He continued his calculations and designs right up until his passing, embodying a profound medieval idea that the study of God's creation through science was itself an act of deep devotion. His illness did not define his legacy, his relentless curiosity did. These precious documents were preserved and studied by clockmakers for generations, who incorporated his groundbreaking gear trains and escapement ideas into their own towering creations. The individual genius of one ailing scholar, pouring his spirit into vellum pages, thus became a permanent thread in the fabric of horology. His story is a powerful reminder that progress often hinges not on perfect conditions, but on the unwavering human passion to understand, to build, and to leave a map for those who follow. The steady tick of the town clock now had a rival, a softer sound emanating from a small, gilded sphere in a nobleman's pocket. The invention of the spring drive in the 15th century shattered the very definition of a clock. No longer anchored by heavy weights and stone towers, time could now travel. Artisans like Peter Henlein of Nuremberg began crafting ornate, drum-shaped timepieces small enough to be held in the hand, powered by a tightly wound strip of tempered steel. This was a liberation from gravity itself. A watch could now keep time on a rocking ship, in a jostling carriage, or simply while strolling through a garden, completely independent of its position. Yet this new freedom came with a frustrating flaw. As the mainspring unwound, its power weakened, causing the clock to run slower and slower, making these early portable timepieces charmingly beautiful but notoriously unreliable. The solution was a masterpiece of mechanical elegance, the fusee. Imagine a cone-shaped pulley connected to the spring by a fine chain. When the spring was fully wound and at its strongest, the chain pulled on the narrow top part of the cone, providing little leverage. As the spring weakened, the chain descended to the wider base portion of the cone, effectively gaining more leverage and compensating for the loss of power. This ingenious cone ensured a perfectly even force was delivered to the gear train from the first tick of the day to the last. The fusee was more than a part. It was a physical argument for precision, a promise that personal time could be as trustworthy as the public hour. Suddenly, time was not just something you heard from the town square, it was something you owned. This shift from a public resource to a private possession was profound. A merchant could now discreetly check his watch during a negotiation. A lady could wear time as a pendant, and an explorer could carry a reliable clock into the wilderness. These portable marvels became powerful status symbols, their intricate engravings and melodious chimes signaling not just wealth, but a modern, forward-thinking mind. This burgeoning consumer demand created a virtuous cycle of innovation, driving clockmakers to compete on ever greater accuracy and more breathtaking artistry. The pocket watch had done more than miniaturize the clock. It had personalized the hours, planting the seed for a world where every individual would one day carry the universe in their pocket. A university lecture hall in the 14th century was not a quiet place for passive reading. It was a dynamic classroom where a massive, ticking engine of brass became the most compelling professor in the room. Medieval universities in Oxford, Paris, and Padua installed these astronomical clocks not as decorations, but as essential three-dimensional textbooks. For a student struggling to grasp the abstract geometry of Ptolemy's planetary spheres, the clock offered a revelation. He could watch a miniature moon glide through its phases on the dial, its motion perfectly synchronized with the real moon outside, physically demonstrating the theories he was trying to memorize from a costly manuscript. This was learning you could see and hear, a multi-sensory experience that transformed cosmology from a dry diagram into a living, breathing system. Professors would gather their students around the clock, using its many dials to predict a coming lunar eclipse or to explain why the sun appeared to slow its journey at the solstices. They connected the clockwork's steady rhythm to the philosophical works of Aristotle, who argued for a universe governed by orderly, predictable laws. Here was the proof turning relentlessly before their eyes. The most advanced models even had movable components. A student could be invited to turn a specific handle, manually advancing the gears to simulate the celestial alignment for an eclipse that would not occur for another 10 years. This hands-on interaction fostered a new kind of critical thinking. It was no longer enough to accept a written authority. You could now test the model against your own observations of the night sky. The very presence of such a complex instrument in a university library sent a powerful message. It declared that theoretical knowledge from ancient texts was incomplete without the practical skill to build, to measure, and to demonstrate. A scholar training for a career in medicine needed to understand astronomical cycles for astrology, a common diagnostic tool. A future church lawyer needed to comprehend the calendar to adjudicate feast days and contracts. The clock trained their minds in precision and mechanical logic, skills applicable far beyond astronomy. By making the cosmos an interactive, tangible reality, these magnificent machines did more than teach facts. They cultivated a generation of innovators who saw the universe not as a mysterious divine mystery, but as a complex, beautiful mechanism waiting to be understood. This shift from reverence for ancient texts to confidence in observable, mechanical truth would ultimately empower these very students to challenge the old paradigms they were taught, setting the stage for the scientific revolutions to come. The relentless chime of the public clock did more than organize the market day. It rewired the human imagination. For centuries, time had been a great wheel, turning with the seasons of planting and harvest, the rising and setting sun, and the predictable rhythms of the natural world. Life was a cycle of renewal where tomorrow mirrored yesterday, but the mechanical clock with its numbered face and steady beat introduced a radical new idea, time as a straight line. It was no longer a returning circle but a road stretching from a fixed past into an unknown future, a path that could be measured in precise segments. Each tick of the escapement was a step forward on this line, a moment that once passed could never be recovered. This was the birth of time as a commodity, something that could be saved, spent, or tragically wasted. In the bustling new merchant economies of growing cities, this linear perspective was a powerful engine. The clock's chime created a shared sense of urgency, synchronizing the labor of thousands and making productivity a measurable goal. Work was no longer tied to the length of a day but to the number of hours an artisan could produce before the bell tolled. This new relationship with time seeped into the very soul of culture. The poet Geoffrey Chaucer, living in this era of mechanical transition, filled his Canterbury Tales with characters obsessed with punctuality and the hurried pace of life, reflecting a society learning to race against the clock. In art, painters began including timepieces in their works as stark symbols of life's fleeting nature, a constant memento mori whispering that every second brought one closer to a final reckoning. This linear model found a powerful ally in Christian theology, which already viewed human history as a singular, divinely ordained journey from the moment of creation to the final judgment day. The clock's inexorable forward march gave this theological concept a physical, audible presence in the town square, reinforcing the idea that each person was a traveler on a one-way road with no cycles to return to. The clockmakers, in their quest to measure the heavens, had inadvertently given humanity a new story to live by, a narrative of progress and finality that would ultimately propel the modern world into being, forever changing our understanding of destiny itself. A single gear began as a bar of raw brass, chosen not for its beauty but for its stubborn refusal to rust. In the medieval workshop, the selection of materials was the first act of defiance against time's decay. The great frame of the clock, the skeleton that would bear immense weight and tension for generations, was forged from wrought iron. This was not a simple process. The blacksmith had to work the metal with hammer and anvil, folding and reheating it to drive out impurities that could later become hidden fractures, dooming the entire mechanism. For the intricate gears that would become the clock's thinking mind, brass was the undisputed champion. This golden alloy of copper and zinc was soft enough to be cut with exquisite detail, yet hard enough to withstand decades of meshing with its neighbors without wearing down. The wooden case, often carved from oak, was more than a shell. It was a protective lung, allowing the mechanism to breathe while shielding it from the corrosive damp of stone towers. Every substance was a deliberate choice in a long-term battle against entropy. The tools that shaped these materials were extensions of the craftsman's own hands, many forged in the same workshop that used them. A bow lathe, its string pulled back and forth, would spin a brass blank while the clockmaker held a sharp chisel, cutting a perfect circle by feel and eye alone. Hand drills, their bits made of tempered steel, bored the precise pivot holes for each gear arbor, but the most personal tool was the file. A clockmaker would own dozens, each with a specific cut and shape, from coarse rasps for initial shaping to needle-fine rifflers for smoothing the delicate teeth of an astronomical gear. His skill was measured in the evenness of his file strokes, the perfect alignment of 100 identical teeth cut without a single measuring gauge beyond his own practiced eye, and the geometric wisdom of his dividers and compasses. These tools were not sold, they were inherited, passed from master to apprentice as solemnly as a knight's sword, each one carrying the invisible wear of countless hours of previous labor. The workshop itself was a realm of elemental transformation where chemistry and artistry were inseparable. A brazier glowed with coals for annealing metal, softening it for cutting. Tubs of oil and vinegar served as quenching baths, each imparting different qualities of hardness and flexibility to the steel. The air smelled of beeswax used to lubricate gears and the tang of metal dust. Here, by the flickering light of tallow candles or oil lamps, the most delicate work was done. A craftsman would lean close, his shadow dancing on the wall, as he used a graver to inscribe the fine lines of a zodiac calendar onto a brass plate, each stroke a permanent record of his concentration. The recipes for alloys, the geometric templates for laying out complex gear trains, even the formulas for the best polishing compounds, these were the guarded secrets of the guild. They were whispered between trusted members, recorded in cryptic personal notebooks, and protected as fiercely as any merchant's treasure. For in these secrets lay the power to build not just a machine that told time, but one that would outlive its creator, a ticking legacy forged from iron, brass, and unwavering human patience. The quiet ticking of a European clock tower often echoed with the wisdom of a distant culture. While monks perfected the weight-driven mechanism, the mathematical soul of the astronomical clock was born far to the south, in the brilliant observatories of the Islamic world. There, scholars had not only preserved the ancient Greek texts of Ptolemy and Aristotle, but had spent centuries refining their observations, correcting their errors, and building a new, more precise map of the heavens. Astronomers like Albertoni meticulously calculated the solar year's length and the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, while Al-Zarqali in Toledo constructed advanced versions of the Astrolabe that could track planetary positions with stunning accuracy. This was not abstract knowledge, it was a treasure trove of celestial data, and it eventually traveled north along trade routes and through the gates of cities like Toledo itself. In this vibrant Spanish city, a remarkable collaboration unfolded. Christian, Jewish, and Muslim scholars worked side by side in translation workshops, turning dense Arabic scientific texts into Latin, the common language of European learning. A European clockmaker, struggling to design a gear train that could accurately model the moon's orbit, now had access to Albertoni's precise tables of lunar motion. He could calculate exactly how many teeth were needed on two interlocking gears to replicate a 19-year lunar cycle, transforming an Islamic astronomer's starlit observation into a brass cog in a French cathedral clock. This was not theft but a true meeting of minds, a shared project to build a working model of the universe. The influence was not only mathematical but also theatrical. Islamic water clocks, magnificent public wonders like the one built by Al-Jazari, featured automated figures, ringing bells, and complex gearing that told time through spectacle. European artisans, hearing tales of these marvels, were inspired to add their own moving figures, their own processions of apostles and dancing skeletons, turning the clock face into a stage for both science and story. The greatest legacy of this cross-cultural exchange was the quiet dismantling of the idea of solitary genius. The redefinition of time was not a European invention, but a human one, a collaborative puzzle solved across continents, where the patient observation of the stars in Baghdad directly enabled the ticking of a clock in Prague. A cathedral spire might point to God, but the town clock tower governed the lives of men. Its silhouette against the sky was a constant declaration of civic power, a statement that this community could master time itself. The rhythmic tolling of its bell carved the chaotic flow of the day into orderly segments, announcing the opening of the market, the start of a court session, and the evening curfew. This shared auditory schedule created a new kind of social glue, synchronizing thousands of individual lives into a single, coordinated society. Punctuality was no longer just a monastic virtue, it was a public duty. The very construction of such a tower was a monumental undertaking, a project that could define a city for generations. In Florence, the great clock of the Palazzo Vecchio was not just a timepiece but an emblem of the Republic's wealth and independence, its installation overseen by the most celebrated architects and engineers. Funding such a marvel required immense collective effort, often drawn from special taxes or the generous donations of wealthy guilds, each vying to have their coat of arms carved beside the dial. This was more than civic pride. It was a declaration that human law and communal agreement could now impose a measurable order on the world. The clock tower's function was not purely symbolic, however. Its great height provided the perfect vantage for a watchman scanning the horizon for the glow of a fire or the dust of an approaching army. The same bell that marked the hours could sound an alarm, weaving the practical need for security directly into the fabric of daily time. The clock face itself became a public canvas, engraved with Latin mottos and heraldic shields that told a story of the town's history and its ruling families. Every glance upward reinforced a social hierarchy and a collective identity, reminding each citizen of their place within a community governed by a new, mechanical rhythm. In this way, the clock tower stood as the ultimate symbol of a transformed world, a world where time was no longer a gift from the heavens but a resource measured, managed, and controlled by human ingenuity. The sun is a notoriously unreliable timekeeper. Its journey across the sky does not create hours of equal length, a fact any medieval farmer tracking the seasons knew intimately. The day measured from one solar noon to the next can be several minutes longer or shorter depending on the time of year, a phenomenon known as apparent solar time. For a society increasingly governed by the steady tick of a mechanical clock, this celestial inconsistency posed a profound problem. How could you build a machine that told a perfectly uniform hour when the universe itself provided a variable one? The solution was an act of brilliant compromise, the invention of mean solar time. This new standard averaged out the sun's yearly irregularities to create a fictional, perfectly regular sun that moved at a constant speed, giving us the 24 equal hours we use today. The difference between this man-made mean time and the sun's true, wobbly apparent time is called the equation of time. For a clockmaker, this was not just a theory, it was a physical challenge to be solved with brass and steel. They began designing extraordinary mechanisms to display both times at once. Some used a special, cam-shaped gear that rotated once a year. This cam, carefully sculpted to match the solar equation, would gently push a lever that advanced or delayed the clock's minute hand, automatically correcting the display to show true sun time. Other clocks featured a secondary dial, often shaped like a figure 8, that graphically showed the cumulative difference between clock time and sun time throughout the year. To calibrate these marvels, they relied on astronomical tables compiled by scholars like Johannes de Sacrobosco. His meticulous lists of the daily difference between apparent and mean time became the essential blueprint for cutting those complex cams. This was mechanical computation in its earliest form, an attempt to build a self-correcting machine that could absorb the imperfections of nature. A farmer planning his harvest or a monk determining the exact moment for a prayer could now glance at a single clock face and see both the idealized time of human commerce and the authentic time of the heavens. In reconciling the sun's variable rhythm with their machine's perfect beat, these artisans achieved something profound. They proved that even the most stubborn irregularities of the natural world could be captured, calculated, and tamed by human ingenuity. A king's patronage could transform a workshop into a laboratory for the future. When Charles V of France summoned the clockmaker Heinrich von Wyk to his court, he was not merely ordering a new timepiece, he was funding a technological revolution. The king provided von Wyk with a generous salary, a team of assistants, and access to the finest materials, from polished brass to precious gems. Freed from the daily struggle to find paying customers, the clockmaker could dedicate years to a single, monumental project, pushing the mechanics of timekeeping into uncharted territory. This system of royal and clerical sponsorship became the engine of horological progress. A powerful patron like Pope Sylvester II, who was himself a renowned scholar and clock enthusiast, understood that a magnificent clock was more than a machine. It was a declaration, an elaborate clock in a palace courtyard with automated figures reenacting the journey of the three magi or the coronation of a king, was a potent form of propaganda. It demonstrated the patron's wisdom, their control over the very hours, and their divine right to rule. These clocks were theatrical spectacles, blending sacred narrative with dynastic celebration to awe visiting dignitaries and humble subjects alike. In return for this patronage, the clockmaker gained immense prestige. A commission from a king was a seal of approval that would guarantee work for a lifetime. More importantly, it granted access to a global network of knowledge. A ruler might send his favored clockmaker as a gift to an allied court, or invite a master artisan from Germany to collaborate with a mathematician from Italy. Within these cosmopolitan workshops, ideas cross-pollinated. A gear design from England might be refined with a new escapement from the Middle East, all under the roof of a French castle. This symbiotic relationship between the artisan and the aristocracy accelerated innovation at a breathtaking pace. The patron's desire for a unique marvel, a clock that could sing like a bird or play chess, forced clockmakers to solve problems no one had ever confronted. They were not just building timekeepers, they were building mechanical dreams, and in doing so, they transformed the craft from a trade into an art, ensuring that the most ambitious clocks were as breathtaking to behold as they were revolutionary to understand. The steady beat of the medieval clock did more than organize society. It gave science a new heartbeat. When Galileo needed to time the swing of a chandelier in the Cathedral of Pisa, he used his own pulse, a method as flawed as a water clock in winter. But the existence of precise mechanical clocks gave him a conceptual framework, a unit of time that was consistent and reliable. This allowed him to discover that a pendulum's swing is isochronous, meaning each oscillation takes the same amount of time regardless of its width. This principle, born from observing a clock's escapement, would itself become the key to building even more accurate timepieces, creating a virtuous cycle of discovery and invention. Later, when Isaac Newton needed to formulate his laws of motion and universal gravitation, he relied on the precise astronomical data that clock-driven observatories could provide. To calculate the force holding the moon in orbit, he needed to know its orbital period down to the second, a measurement made possible by the temporal scaffolding built by generations of clockmakers. The machine that measured the heavens thus became the essential tool for unlocking their deepest secrets. This relationship went far beyond mere measurement. The clock's intricate gearwork became a powerful new metaphor for the cosmos itself. The philosopher René Descartes looked at the universe and saw a divine clockmaker. He proposed that God had created the world as a perfect piece of clockwork, set it in motion with immutable laws, and then let it run. This was a radical shift from a world of spirits and unpredictable miracles to a universe governed by predictable and mechanical principles. If the cosmos was a clock, then a scientist's job was to take it apart in their mind, to understand its gears and springs. This mechanistic worldview encouraged thinkers to seek physical causes for natural phenomena, from the orbits of planets to the circulation of blood, laying the philosophical groundwork for the entire scientific revolution. The clockmaker's workshop, in turn, became a silent partner in this great endeavor. The very tools developed for cutting precision gears were adapted to grind the flawless lenses for Galileo's telescopes. The techniques for calibrating an escapement to eliminate error were applied to the fine adjustment screws of a microscope. These instruments, born from horology, extended human sight to the craters of the moon and the teeming life in a drop of water, revealing new worlds that demanded new explanations. The clockmaker's entire approach to problem solving, a method of careful observation, repeated experimentation, and incremental refinement, became the model for the scientific method itself. It was a discipline of patience and proof, where a theory was only as good as the tangible, repeatable results it could produce. So when we hear the story of Galileo dropping weights from a tower or Newton witnessing an apple fall, we are only hearing half the tale. The other half is the quiet, persistent ticking in the background, the sound of a medieval invention that gave science the time and the tools to think. The clock provided more than the minutes and seconds. It offered a new way of seeing the universe, not as a mysterious caprice, but as a complex, beautiful machine whose inner workings could be understood. This fundamental shift from a world of wonder to a world of inquiry is the unspoken legacy of those who first learned to measure the heavens with wheels of brass and iron. Our modern world ticks to a rhythm born in the fires of medieval workshops. From the quiet monastic cell to the soaring cathedral spire, these artisans captured the pulse of the cosmos itself, transforming time from a vague natural cycle into a precise, measurable force that would organize society and ignite centuries of technological progress. We have traced their journey from the first weight-driven mechanisms that tamed gravity to the brilliant fusion of the Astrolabe star charts with turning gears, creating machines that educated the public and unified communities under a common temporal language. The Verge escapement gave time its heartbeat, The spring drive set it free to travel in our pockets, and the complex gear trains became mechanical minds that calculated the heavens. This was not merely a technical achievement, but a profound shift in human consciousness. The legacy of these masters of metal and measurement is not confined to museums. It lives on in the gentle tick of a grandfather clock in a quiet hall, in the precise digital readout on a smartphone, and in the synchronized global network that governs our finances and our communications. Every time you glance at a watch, you are reading a language first written in brass and iron by these forgotten geniuses. Our modern grasp of time, so integral to every facet of our lives, is built upon a foundation of centuries of patient observation, unparalleled craftsmanship, and a remarkable exchange of knowledge across cultures. As you reflect on this journey from celestial observation to the clock on your wall, consider which innovation resonates most with you. Was it the philosophical leap of the Verge escapement, the portable power of the spring drive, or the sheer ambition of the great astronomical clocks? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let the conversation continue. Thank you for exploring this remarkable chapter of history with us. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the wonders of the medieval mind, please subscribe for more journeys into the past that shaped our present.